You're listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long.
Bravo!
My compliments, little lady.
Commercial!
Break for 30 seconds. Commercial!
You're now listening to BaaD Radio.
Hello and welcome to BaaD Radio. BaaD stands for Business at a Distance. This is a show about local businesses and business networking. We are here in the News Radio WFLA Orlando studios from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. every Sunday. And I am your host, Angela Smarito. And in studio with me, we have Melissa Jacob with Striking Brand.
Hello, hello.
That's a good applause. I like that one.
I like that one.
I know. Melissa's our co-host, and she is also our videographer. If you go to baadradio.com, and that's BAAD radio.com, you can see all the previous episodes of the show. And if you go to strikingbrand.com, that is Melissa's business. You will see all of her other work because she is a photographer as well as a videographer.
Mm-hmm.
And please welcome back in studio with me, John Kennedy with Forge IT Consulting.
Happy to be back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for making arrangements to be here today.
Mm-hmm.
John is in a new BNI chapter that meets on Thursday, so he's like, I can do it, but I have to be there at this time. I was like, we can make that work. It was like 30 minutes,
right.
So
You're
that's
good.
not a big deal at all. So what's been going on?
Oh, not a whole lot in the beginning of the year. Oddly enough, it's been pretty slow, but that was backed up by having a really, really busy December, which is backwards for my industry most of the time because most people are like, it's the end of the year. They're not really in the mood to do any changes.
And
they might want to spend, but they're not willing to actually do anything.
Right. No, in advertising, things definitely get very light at the end of the year. Usually people tend to like have putting their budgets together and do all their planning in like October. And then December, you're like trying to get somebody on the phone is next to impossible. But so you're kind of the opposite
bizarre.
this year.
Yeah, it was just super busy in December. Everybody wanted to work that week between, Christmas and New Year's. Everybody wanted stuff done during that time period. I don't know why. They just did.
Well, I'm glad that you're flexible.
Right.
Because I would have been like, I'm so sorry.
I know.
I don't think I can help you. But for in your industry though, it's almost kind of like you have to be on call though, right? Because it's like if somebody needs a computer fixed, they need it. It's not like, hey, can I get to you next month?
Right. If you're not able to get to them within a fairly quick turnaround, it's not even worth it for them to work with you because they got to go find. They've got to get it done right now. So I tend to make sure that I've got spots in my schedule all the time for those kinds of emergencies, just in case, because you never know what's going to happen. That's why Monday morning first thing is absolutely never scheduled.
Because over the weekend, that's what,
exactly.
Okay. Either that or something happens on Friday and they're like, okay, I'll just leave it till Monday.
Right.
I want to ask that about preventative, but before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit about Forge IT Consulting and let the whole audience knows. Let's talk about the different branches and what your business actually does.
Sure. So IT consulting has a lot of different stuff involved in it. So it's the troubleshooting random stuff. You've got a problem, I can fix it. Your printer doesn't work. You call, I get remotely connected and fix something simple or come out if it's something more complicated. That's just basic troubleshooting. Then there is security, which includes antivirus, email filtering, education, backups, making sure that data stays safe. Whatever your company data is, whatever your personal data is, we need to make sure that it's safe. And then there's networking. You need to make sure that all of your devices can talk to each other, and make sure they can get out to the internet. So that's a big deal. So there, Wi-Fi, wired networking, all those kinds of things are interrelated and can cause problems on their own where, you're the end user, you think your internet's bad, but the problem is that your Wi-Fi is no good.
Right.
Gotcha.
So like neighbors down the street would always complain about Spectrum internet being bad. And I'm like, your internet's not bad. It's your Wi-Fi that's bad. My internet's not going down. Your internet's not going down. You just have bad Wi-Fi coverage. So
All right. Well,
let's
talk about that for a second. What is the difference between the two?
Okay. So your computer getting out to the internet or whatever device you're using, getting out to the internet is a bunch of different steps. So your device, whatever it is, connects to your home network, and that'll be either by a wired or wireless connection.
That's the router. Is that a router?
That can be a router. It can also be an access point.
Okay.
The difference between the two of them is whether or not the next step is the internet. Router, the next step is the internet. An access point, the next step is probably the router. So,
Okay. So you
gotta
don't
get-
want an access point. You want less steps as possible to.
that's not necessarily true.
Okay,
Because inside of your own network, inside the home network, most of the devices are going to talk at gigabit speed because that's the speed that most everything runs at. That's consumer grade. It's fast. It's more than fast enough for nearly anybody working on a home network. And as long as everything plugged into it is at gigabit speed, everything inside your network works at gigabit speed. So it doesn't matter
And
what.
for just regular people, that's plenty fast.
It's plenty fast. So that's how much bandwidth you have to talk to the other devices inside your network. Then you get to the router. And the router is the thing that says, okay, this internal network needs to go talk to a different network, whether that's the internet or if you've got an extra complicated network, maybe you've got additional networks inside of your network. Say you've got a home security system or cameras or something. We keep that off of the normal network for all of your, computers and whatnot, because we just want to keep them separate. Or you want to keep all of your Internet of Things stuff separate. So your, washing machine or television or your
Is there washing machines that will go on Wi-Fi?
there are
Garage door openers.
garage door openers, all of these kinds of things that, they connect to the internet. They do something really small, maybe like your thermostat or something. Those things tend to not have very good security. They're easily hackable. You want them on a different network than your regular computers because
Okay.
you don't want those things then becoming a way to hack into your other computers.
Okay, so
So
that
if
makes
you've got
complete sense.
a router that can handle those kinds of things, that's where the router separates everything. And the next stop is the modem or router provided by your ISP. So your internet service provider provides you with either a modem or a modem router combination of some sort. And that's the part that says, okay, now we're coming out of your network and we're going into the internet.
That would be a Spectrum.
And that would be a Spectrum or an AT&T
Right.
or a T-Mobile or whoever. So at that stage, that's the first hop inside of whatever your ISP's network is. I'm going to actually give a little bit more knowledge about how it works farther along,
Okay.
because that's the part that generally anybody really cares about. But when you're talking about troubleshooting something down the line, you have to worry about all the steps later.
Absolutely.
So you're trying to get to Netflix and you're downloading stuff from Netflix because you're, watching it and that's what you're trying to do. And you can't. Okay. Where's the problem? So we can check all the things that I've already talked about inside of your network, and then we can check to see whether or not you can get to other internet sites. If you can, okay, now the problem is probably between your internet provider and the provider that Netflix uses,
Gotcha.
because they're not on the same network.
Okay.
So you have to go through all the routers inside of Spectrum, and then you have to go through all the routers inside of
So
whatever.
You just have to eliminate one by one.
Exactly.
So it's a process of elimination to figure out where the problem lies.
Right.
Yep. So minimum number of hops between your device and whatever website or service you're trying to get to is usually going to be at least 8.
Wow.
It's more than you would have thought, huh?
Exactly.
Oh yeah, troubleshooting.
And it could be any part of that process. And there are tools to figure out which part it is, so you can talk to the right people. Unfortunately, past your internet provider, all you can do is complain to your internet provider, and they have to go talk to the internet provider of whoever it is you're trying to get
right
to.
Netflix. Or
But if you know it's
whatever.
inside of their network, because the hop stops communicating inside their network, you can call them and say, "Hey, it's breaking inside of your network. I need you to fix this.
Right.
When is this going to be fixed?"
Mm-hmm.
So it's troubleshooting that kind of stuff is way more complicated than just calling your internet provider and saying, "Hey, my internet doesn't work."
Right, and that's what most people do.
was gonna
Because,
say.
like I said, that's what I would do.
And that's why you get the same questions every time you call in and do that. It's because the person on the other side of the phone is trying to determine where the problem actually is.
and they have no clue.
And they're doing the same thing that I would do, except that they don't have as much knowledge in the background.
Right. Well, I mean, I think my house is a perfect example of people not knowing what's going on. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm
Right.
talking, so we're going to talk more BaaD Radio when we get back, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore. It's kind of still cool out there, but you can still cuddle up with your loved one. But first, a trip to Premier Couple Superstore. They have got a huge selection of lingerie, shoes, toys, games, love oils, and a ton of great gifts. With Premier Couple Superstore, you don't pay those high prices because you go directly to the source. 5009 South OBT or shop online at premiercouples.net because a couple that plays together stays together.
Oh, yeah.
Love it. All right, John Kennedy with Forge IT Consulting.
That's
Like I said,
aggressive.
John Kennedy. I know. He's got a strong name.
It is.
It is a strong name. So we kind of, and I know this always happens too, is like we're going to talk. I wanted to ask you about preventative,
Mhm.
and then we kind of got on.
We got sidetracked.
That's all right, but that's good because we got plenty of time.
Mhm.
Preventative. So
Mhm.
are there things that people can do to prevent like being taken down by
Mhm.
IT problems, and what are some of those things?
Absolutely. The biggest one is updates.
Mhm.
Everything
But
gets
I hate
updates.
updates.
Everybody hates updates.
They
But
move things. Why do they have to move things? Why can't they just leave things where they are and update it without the changes?
that's a question I can't really answer because I don't do that. But a lot of the updates that come out on a regular basis tend to be security related in the first place
Okay.
or reliability related. And a lot of things that get updates don't actually get updated. So if you have your own home router or your business has its own Wi-Fi router in the business, that thing gets updates
Mm-hmm.
and you have to run them manually. It's not automatic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you go to the store, you get one and you install it and everything's working great.
Mhm.
There's probably 3 or 4 updates that it's behind when you bought
When you
it.
buy it. Mhm.
Because they're sitting on the shelves for months and months, or it's stock that they bought, like a year ago, and the hardware hasn't changed, but the firmware for it has.
Mhm.
And so, like when I'm installing one, that's the first thing I do after it's up and ready, and I've created the config for it. I back it up, and then I update the firmware because if you're on the latest firmware, you're the most secure and you're the least likely to go down for reliability problems.
If you are backed up by 3 or 4 updates
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden you update them all at once, does that cause problems?
Usually not.
Okay.
Depending upon the type of device, especially home networking devices, you actually don't install the other ones. You
Mhm.
just go to the next one.
Mhm.
I see.
And it just reads the old configuration that's already in the device, and it just goes from, say it's version 2.1. It'll go to version 2.14 just fine
Mhm.
without
Okay.
needing to do anything in between.
So it's not like it goes to 1, then 2, then 3, then
Right.
4, and next thing
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
it's a
most
totally
networking
different
equipment
thing.
doesn't do that. And a lot of computer updates are very similar. They'll be what are called cumulative updates. And that's the whole point, is that we're going to take a whole bunch of other updates that we've released in the meantime, in case you haven't already installed them, and we're going to install all of them at once.
Mhm.
It'll just check to see which ones you already have and install the ones you don't.
And how is somebody, how do you do that? So if we have, because our side of the house, we have
Mhm.
we have one router that's through
Mhm.
Spectrum. We have one that we've purchased on our own.
Right. So when it's one that you've purchased on your own, hopefully when you set it up, you wrote down the admin username and password, and you know how to get into.
That would be my
it's-
son. And so, I can.
If you can get into
So
the admin
Aiden?
area,
Yes.
it's in there.
Okay.
If you don't know how to get into the admin area, or
Oh,
if
I
it's
know
one
he
of these,
does, but he has to
you
manually
have to
go in
actually
there.
manually go
Okay.
in there and do it.
I'm
And
gonna say
then
something to him about it.
a lot of the newer ones, I don't particularly like that they do this because it makes my life harder. But for the individual consumer, it's probably a good thing. A lot of them will come with an app nowadays where you have to manage it through this app that's on your phone,
Mhm.
and you can do it through there. And a lot of those will have more automatic updates than the old ones did.
But my Spectrum one, it
Hmm.
will
The
automatically.
Spectrum one will automatically install updates when they push them,
Mm-hmm.
but most of them require a reboot. So if you're
And if
just
we're not
leaving your
rebooting,
your
yeah.
internet on all the time, like everybody else does, because
Mhm.
everybody does this, it's not actually getting the update. You
Right.
have to restart them every so often to get that.
Hmm.
And those Spectrum modems, typically it's a matter of unplugging it when you can leave the internet off for a few minutes, waiting a few seconds, plugging it back in, it'll boot back up and
Yeah.
run whatever update during
Right.
that time period.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on this new WoW stuff that's coming out.
Which WoW stuff?
It's all this cable that they've installed, and it's got to do with Wi-Fi or something like that. Have you not heard of it?
I need more information. as well.
WOW. I don't know. Tom, text me. Text me what it is. And so, but yeah, it's like super fast Wi-Fi, like crazy fast, and it's wires that they actually buried at the front of all of our yards, and it's like a whole new thing.
That's probably unique to your particular neighborhood. It sounds like something that's being installed for your neighborhood specifically, and that's a common thing. Neighborhoods that have an HOA that want to bring faster internet to all houses in the neighborhood. My own neighborhood did this. We'll go out and shop for internet for the entire neighborhood.
Really?
And get a good deal with some, provider to get internet that's a lot cheaper than you could get from the traditional providers. And they'll, dig brand new fiber optics in all of the neighborhood and provide you with different stuff depending upon what kind of provider it is. So that's probably unique to your own neighborhood.
Oh, I thought it was something that was like just going on everywhere. But
I know. I'm like looking it
I
up
don't
right
think
now.
so.
Yeah,
like trying to figure
did something pop up with WODW? Like, what did you call it?
Is WoW internet legit? Is one of the questions. So,
What does it say?
no. Earned an average score of 3.47 out of 5. I don't know. I'm going to need to do
Yeah.
some more
Either.
research.
Exactly.
But you're right. It's talking about uses copper cable, fiber, and DSL to bring internet to subscribers.
Interesting. So it might be one that's
They're just pushing it hard in our neighborhood. Like they have
Yeah.
a guy going from door to door.
okay.
And
Yeah, this isn't more like a traditional provider like an AT&T or a Spectrum that's putting in all of the networking that they need to put in to sell it to all the houses in your neighborhood. This isn't one where your neighborhood's HOA purchased it on your
No.
behalf.
We don't have an HOA.
Exactly.
So preventative. Run your updates.
Run your updates because honestly, 99%. Well, I don't know about 99%, but a very large percentage of things that can infect your computer these days depend on an unpatched security hole in your operating system, whether that be a Mac or Windows computer. Both Microsoft and Apple constantly come out with security updates. And if you're not installing those updates, you are inherently susceptible to whatever it is that they patched. So that is the biggest thing you can do to stay protected.
And that's what's happening is that they come out with security, then you have hackers that poke holes in it, and they have to fix that and poke hole. So it's just
and
an
there's actually
ongoing-
people that do this professionally, and it's called white hat hacking. And the whole point is find the holes that are in whatever system there are and bring them to whoever it is that makes the system and say, hey, I found this hole. You should pay me because I found this hole for you and I haven't told anybody. Because that's what they'll do.
That's like holding it. Sounds a little nasty.
It gets
to
a
me.
little gray if you're holding the person hostage to do
That's
it.
what I was thinking of. It's
But
like hostage.
The white hat ones usually are doing it in conjunction with a bounty program that those companies already have in place. Microsoft, Apple, Google, all of these companies have a bounty program that say, if you find a problem and you bring it to us, we will pay you some amount of money.
That reminds me, I don't remember when I was telling you about Froggers, how they had to pay to have like the Super Bowl on.
Oh, yeah, that
and
one channel.
They have that sort of thing, a bounty too, where they send people out, and if they see people like televising games and stuff like that, they report it back to try to catch the people that are televising it without paying for it. And I'm like, you snitches. That's the way I look at it. But in that situation, it's kind of good.
It's very good. And every now and then a company will not be terribly thrilled with those kinds of people and they won't offer bounties. And then it gets a little bit gray. But yeah, they can get real nasty with people that bring up those kinds of things. And a lot of the people that do this kind of stuff, they're really just trying to make things more secure for everybody. And so, if the company is not willing to pay them for it, they'll just blast it out there and the company has to deal with it on their own.
Right. Well, I guess ethics has to play a role with that as well. So another great segment. So we're going to run to break, and when we get back, we're going to talk more with Forge IT Consulting.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back. And this portion of BaaD Radio is brought to you by Body Street of Winter Park. Experience the future of fitness at Body Street in Winter Park. Lose weight, build muscle, tone your body in only 20 minutes a week. Visit bodystreet.us where fitness meets efficiency. And we are here with John Kennedy with Forge IT Consulting, and we've already had two great segments, and now we're going on to our third. And I mentioned over the break, I think the next time John's going to be on, I'm going to ask for listener questions, but I'll do it online so that because we pre-record the show, so we'll be able to get the questions in and then ask them on the air. And we can, like, if people are okay with it, we can mention their names and whatnot. But I did have a question sent in from my husband Tom, and he was like, "Can you ask John why I can't update my Mac to the newest operating system? Keeps giving me an error message."
That can be a few different reasons. I'll give you the top three that I can think of. The first one being there's not enough disk space. If the amount of free disk space on your computer is not enough that they can install everything that needs to be installed, it's going to error out.
Error out.
Every time. The next one it could be is there could be a problem downloading the update, and this could be for something that's on Apple's end. This has happened in the past where they used a particular certificate to sign their updates, and that particular certificate expired. So if you didn't run the update back when that certificate was legit, and you try to do it later, it would fail. And then
that kind of like WeTransfer, if you don't download it by the time and then it expires.
Exactly, they expire. It's more of a security handshake sort of thing. Certificates and signing, digital signing of data is done based off of those certificates, and those always have an expiration date.
Gotcha.
And then the final one is, does your piece of hardware meet the minimum system requirements for that particular upgrade? Usually you won't get on a Mac at least, you won't get an error for that kind of an issue. It just won't show up at all. It won't give you the update at all, simply because Apple is enough in control of their particular hardware that, if that particular piece doesn't meet the minimum requirements, it's never going to show it to you in the first place.
Yeah, well, I know he sees it, so it's going to be A or B.
Most likely A.
A. That's what I was thinking too. So we might need to delete some stuff on there.
Exactly. Just got to clear out some extra space, probably.
I mean, Macs hold up, right? Macs hold up test
They
time.
do. The way that Apple makes their computers and the way that they handle updates, typically a Macintosh computer, provided you treat it well enough that it doesn't, dropping it or breaking it in some physical manner, should last somewhere in the neighborhood of like 7 years of having good updates. Now, there was some talk a little while ago, like maybe a couple of years ago, where Apple was going to not support things quite as long as they were, and not provide updates for quite as long, which of course is a security issue. If you're no longer getting updates, that means that whatever security holes are in the operating system when they stop remain there forever.
Right.
But
I can imagine a lot of people were not so happy about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, when that was mentioned, people were definitely getting a little bit upset about it, but it's usually people like me who pay attention to it rather than the people that are buying the Macs in the first place, the majority of them anyway. But yes, they do tend to last because they do tend to have better hardware in the first place. You're just paying a lot of extra money for
Yeah, we've talked about that on previous shows. You said that, it's higher quality stuff, and so that's why it costs more money.
No, I'm not saying that it's higher quality and therefore it costs more. It's higher quality already, and Apple charges you an extra premium on top of that for it to be Apple stuff. Because you could get an equivalent machine from a manufacturer that does Windows computers that has roughly equivalent hardware in it and pay a significantly cheaper cost. There is an Apple tax, if you will, for buying anything Apple, just because they want to make more money on it. They have more margin.
So you can, but that's going to be a PC versus a Mac.
That's right.
An Apple is an Apple is an Apple. Mac. You know what I mean? But like I said, there's PCs and there's a million different versions. There's Dell, there's whatever this is, ThinkPad. Those are all PCs, but there's not like a million different versions of Apples.
Right, because the Apple operating system, Mac OS, is meant to only run on Macintosh hardware, and only Apple makes it. That wasn't always the case. For a little while, Apple licensed out stuff the same way that Microsoft said, you know what, we'll put it on any hardware provided it meets these things. Apple did the same thing for a little while, and back in the 90s. It just didn't go very well for them. And when Steve Jobs took over again, he stopped that. And and also for a little while Macintosh computers were using the same CPUs as Windows computers were, there was an effort by a group of people to run Mac OS on hardware that was meant to run Windows, or hardware that could run Apple operating system theoretically, but because of the way Apple locked it down, it was very hard to do that.
Right.
It was called a Hackintosh because you were
I
putting
like
Macintosh software on something that's not an actual Macintosh.
Right.
But yeah, now that Apple has their own CPUs that nobody else uses, nothing else runs on them, at least not natively.
Right.
It's a lot harder to do that kind of thing now.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, different formulas work for different things. So, I personally, I have one of each, and I've had to learn how to coexist with each of them.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
one's a work one, and then one's my personal one. So, I've always grown up as a PC type person. So going over to the Mac now, once I've accepted it,
Yeah.
That's
the
a
hard
big
part.
That's a big portion.
I find things on the Mac that I like better.
Right.
And vice versa.
I
So-
grew up with Macs, so I was a huge Mac advocate for a long, long time. And then I got into, more IT stuff, and Apple changed a lot of the ways that they do business, and I didn't like it as much, and I've switched the other side, and I'm not a big fan anymore.
So
But
you do more of the PC stuff.
yeah, I prefer it for myself. That's not to say that I don't know it and understand it, because like I said, I've got years and years of history with it. It's just that that's not what I prefer anymore.
Let's talk about businesses then.
Mhm.
So, let's say you get in touch with a startup,
Mhm.
and they're like, and let's do it a couple scenarios. Let's talk about a small retail, like a brick and mortar. And I meant maybe that's not a good example, but let's think about that. How would you start that conversation? If I'm like, okay, John, I'm starting this brick and mortar. I'm going to sell so and so, but I need a system. I need everything, like from the computers to the printers to the phone systems to all of the things. How
Right.
would you go about that?
So the first thing I would be asking them is that, what's the thing that makes you money, and what data is incredibly important in order to make you that money. So that determines what is the most important things for your business. What are the things that I need to pay attention to? So for retail, typically that's going to be inventory and possibly customer information
Okay.
and accounting information.
Okay.
And most likely they're not going to have a lot of computers that are needed in the brick and mortar location necessarily. They might even do their accounting off site someplace. What they're really need to make sure works at the retail level is their network needs to work, their internet needs to not go down, and their point of sale system needs to be
Okay.
functional.
Yep.
So that's what they need first, more than anything else. On top of that, then we'll start asking them, okay, where's your accounting software? Are we backing it up? Are we making sure that it's secure? And do you do any digital marketing or something of that nature?
I was going to ask about that too.
If you're going to do digital marketing, well, then we're starting to talk about email and domains and all that kind of fun stuff. Like, I mean, most companies are going to have something like that anyway. You're going to at least want to have a website,
Right.
and you're probably going to want some kind of business email. And you look 10 times better in business email if you've got your own domain and you're not using a Gmail account. And the cost to do that is just so much lower than people think, but they don't know because they don't know how much it costs. And then they're like, I just don't want to deal with it. I'll get a Gmail account. I know how to do that.
Right.
But
I'm
just
a
because you
firm-
know how to do it doesn't mean it's the best way to go.
I want to continue on this because that's a big deal right there, because I know I think about things when I see a
Same.
Gmail. So everybody stay tuned. We'll be back with more BaaD Radio.
To BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back. And this portion of the show is brought to you by Ground Up Property Services. Do you know what your sprinkler system did last night? Probably not. So now is a good time to get your irrigation system serviced by Ground Up Property Services today. Be sure to ask Rick Hall with Ground Up about a water sensor too, so your water or your lawn does not get too much water. And don't forget about the lawn painting service. If you're planning an outdoor event and you want to hide those brown spots on the lawn, call 407-468-4295 or visit groundupinc.net. And we are here with John Kennedy with Forge IT Consultant, and he is walking us through like what it would look like to launch a business from an IT perspective. And we had gotten to the part where we talked about setting up a website and setting up your company email.
Mhm.
So why do you think so many people why do you think so many people think it's such a big deal to get your own email? Because it's really not. I don't understand.
I think it's not that it's a big deal or that it's all that difficult, and I don't think they really think it's super expensive. I think it's more along the lines of, I know how to get a Gmail account and it's free.
Right.
Why should I do anything else?
Right.
Let's tell them why.
So why? It looks a heck of a lot more professional.
Agree.
Second, you have greater control over it. So like you're able to add additional email filtering. You're able to add additional security. You can back it up at least more easily. I mean, sure, there's ways that you could use a janky way to back up your Gmail account, but people generally don't. And then you're able to hook it into email marketing campaigns. Like if you're going to be sending out email marketing, Google has definitely clamped down on being able to use Gmail accounts to do that, especially if it looks like business and it looks like you're sending out marketing email. They're really clamping down on that. It's a lot harder to do.
Okay.
Whereas if you've got your own domain, you can do it the way that Google wants you to do it, and it'll work and it'll look better. And it's just not that expensive. So the domain, you have to find one that somebody doesn't already have already, which can be tough, no doubt about it, but you got to find one, and they're probably going to be around $20 a year.
Right.
To have it registered.
I was really happy to see BaaD Radio was available, and you got Striking Brand too.
Lucky. Yeah, that was part of when I was naming it, though.
Exactly. You should be thinking about that when you're naming your business.
I think Striking Brand's a great name for what you do.
Thank you.
But I meant the fact that it was open, so you didn't come up with Striking Brand first and then.
Correct. I was just coming up with a bunch of different ideas. It's something that was easy and people would be able to remember it, and not too crazy to where they're like, how do you spell it? You know,
Right.
those types of things.
I think it's cute when people do fun spellings of stuff, but the more I've gotten into like helping businesses with their digital stuff, the more I've realized it causes more problems.
Be different in other areas.
That's
like
true.
being better at what you do.
A previous company that I worked for had a hyphen in the middle of the domain name, and trying to explain that to people and make sure they're typing in the correct thing in it, or understanding that, no, I'm not saying dash as in type out dash. I want you to hit this particular minus button is a huge pain. But once you've found one, like I said, it's only like $20 a year to have that domain, and you'll need that to have a website. I don't do websites. I have plenty of people that I know that do, and I'm happy to refer people to that, but I don't do them myself. That's a whole different skill set. But
it's important.
It is very important. Yeah. I think so. It's one of those things that people should have for a business.
Oh, as soon as I see somebody with a Gmail email, I'm like, immediately.
It's hard. I know though, and like I always say, I'm like, hey, you should do that, and they're like, oh, well, we've been using this for years, and we just, you know.
But for those people, they can have that email, what's it called, like automatically forwarded to your new. So even those people, if you hear somebody say that we've had this forever, they can keep that, and people can still email, and it'll forward to their new one. They'll give them time to let people know.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to change your domain, because even there's people out there that have like a janky domain, and they finally are able to buy the one that they want, or they change the business name, and they get a new domain. All I do is set up the new domain as their default, leave the old domain as an additional alias on all of their stuff. They still receive email at the old one, but everything they send out is on the new one. And then people just get used to the new one, and they reply to the new one. And then it just becomes the one everybody uses.
Right.
So it's pretty easy to switch to that kind of stuff. And it's not hard for customers to figure that stuff out. So that's not something people should be afraid of.
But with the operating system that you get so it's important to get the system that can do, I call them email blasts, because that's what we do say in radio, but I don't know, like email marketing. that sort of
There's
thing.
lots of different tools out there. There's ones that are built into customer relations management systems, CRMs. There's ones that are completely separate. There's ones that hook into a CRM pretty well. There's ones that are all just digital marketing campaigns. There's ones that just help you send them out. There's lots of different options. And you definitely want to talk to somebody that's an expert in digital marketing that has worked with your particular type of company before you do that. You don't want to do that on your own. And you don't want to call me for it. I will refer people out for that.
Right.
Certainly.
No,
But
I know,
you still have to have the domain, and you still have to have your own email because you got to receive anything that they reply to. So now you're talking, well, where do I host my actual email? Where does that happen? Well, it usually comes down to either Microsoft or Google, simply because those are the two biggest, and provide a bunch of extra services surrounding email, like calendar and contacts syncing, that you want to have in your system anyway. If you want those kinds of things, those are the two big places
Well, I'm familiar
to go.
with Outlook. What else is there?
Outlook is only a program, though.
Is it?
It
Okay.
is. So if you want to have all the things that Outlook keeps track of, all the data that you have in Outlook, sync between your computer and every other device that you have and some server in the cloud, you want to host with Microsoft, or at least somebody else that resells Microsoft.
Well, I know that I what's on here. I use Outlook for my BaaD Radio email, and I like it. It's like if I get an email in and then another one comes, it's easy for me to understand it now. Like on a Gmail account, I don't necessarily like the way it's almost like it gathers all of them into one thing, and I'm like, I want to see my last one.
Yep, that's called Conversation View,
and
you can turn it off.
Can you
in
help
both
me with
places? But by default, Google uses Conversation View. By default, people have used non-Conversation View for years and years and years, and on the Microsoft side. And so, if you're setting up a brand new account, by default, it'll turn on Conversation View because people are so used to Gmail now. That is now the default for Microsoft.
Do you like
But anytime I set it up, I always turn it off because I don't like it, and most everybody else doesn't. That's why yours is set up that way, because I turned it off.
Okay, thank you for doing that. I didn't know that. I thought that was just the Gmail thing, that it had to be like that.
Gmail popularized it, but it's certainly not the only place you can find it
I find
anymore.
it very hard to function. Like I said, because I'm used to this right here, and sorting it and doing all the things is just, like I said, I didn't realize it was just a setting. Now I feel really dumb.
Well, I actually like it for my personal email, and I do not like it for business email. I don't know why that's different for me. I like having them separate and different. Not everyone's like that.
Well,
so it is just an option.
I'm searching for things a lot in my email. I don't know about you. Do you
Yeah.
search?
Absolutely.
Like my search bar is probably the most used
100%.
thing, and so for some reason in the Outlook, the way the non-conversation, I tend to be able to find things easier.
Yeah, and when you do have Conversation View turned on in Outlook, I find that searching does become that much more complicated and busy looking to be able to find the things that people want to find. And because of that, that's why I generally always turn it off anytime I'm setting it up for anybody, unless they specifically tell me, no, I like Conversation View, please turn that on.
See, stuff like that is so interesting, and that people don't take that into consideration when you're starting a business, because you can sit there and waste so much time searching for stuff, or when you're starting a business. So this stuff is really it's really important. I know it sounds trivial, but it's not.
No, you need to work in the way that works best for you.
Right.
And you need to know that, hey, if this doesn't work the way that that you work, that there's usually a way to change it so that it will work the way that you work. And whether or not you're able to find that can be tough. I've seen it a million different ways, and so I usually know where to find it. So it's a lot easier when you're working with an expert that knows those kinds of things.
Right. Well, that's super, super important. So I know we're getting ready to go to break, but I would be curious for a retail location. So would you go the Mac way or the PC way?
Typically, I would recommend.
Okay, hold on. You know what? Don't answer that.
Okay, I won't.
We're gonna try to do the cliffhanger. So
Got to
is it
remember
gonna
what
be
we
Mac?
asked.
I know, Mac or PC. So stay tuned for more BaaD Radio.
You're listening to Radio Cosmos.
All night long.
Bravo!
My compliments, little lady.
Come on, sir! Break for 30 seconds. Come on, sir! End of transmission.
You're now listening to BaaD Radio.
Welcome back as we launch into the second hour of BaaD Radio. I'm going to run through all the regular info for those of you who might have just joined us. I am Angela Smorito, your host, and in studio with me we have our co-host and videographer, Melissa Jacob.
Hello, hello.
And her business is called Striking Brand. But if you go to baadradio.com, that's BAAD radio.com, you can see all of the previous episodes of the show because she does the YouTube video and she does a beautiful job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And then if you go to strikingbrand.com, you can see all of her other work there. So for the first hour, we've been talking with John Kennedy with Forge IT Consulting, and we're going to continue on this conversation with John. Forge IT Consulting has been a sponsor of BaaD Radio for quite some time now, and so that's why he's in here like every quarter. We're gonna have John in, and I do get great feedback when you've been on the show. I know I shared some of it with you, but after each show, it's becoming more and more common for people to message me like great show, and I'm happy to share those with you.
Sure, why not?
Like I said, I just got one right before this, so it's great to see that it's like catching on, that people are listening, and people are starting to recognize the guests. So,
Right.
the whole thing is really fun, to
I
be
love
honest with you. So, all right. So we were talking about building up like the business, and I asked if you're for the small retail shop, would you suggest a PC system or a Mac system? And that's where we left off.
Now, there's 3 major questions you have to ask and answer before you can make a decision on that. First, how much do you want to spend? What's your budget? Second, does the software you want to run work on one or the other or both? And then finally, what are you used to, and more importantly, what is your staff used to? Because the more used to you are of a particular system, the harder it is for you to learn the other one. And that's just human nature. You've learned a system, you're used to that system. You have to, when you change, it's harder.
It is harder,
And
especially the older you get too.
Absolutely.
The younger generation tends to be able to learn multiple platforms better, whereas somebody my age, or I don't know about you guys, but for my age, it's hard for me to change the way that I process things and learn a whole new system.
Exactly. And being in the in the business that I'm in, I have to do that all the time. I have to keep up with it, and I enjoy it. But that's why I'm the IT guy and you're not.
Right. I'm just like, where's the little X that I hit to close this out? It's not where it's supposed to be. I don't know how to get to it.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, just turn it off.
Yep.
I would think for most businesses, you're going to go PC route.
I would think so too.
I would imagine so. A brick and mortar retail situation, you might not even go Mac or PC in the first place because all you're worrying about is point of sale machines, and those usually run off of some kind of Android.
Right.
And you're not ever dealing with the operating system in the first place.
Now, how intricate or how close do you get associated with the POS systems, the point of sale, and like because we had Ashley on from Get Me Automated. Yeah, do you know Ashley?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, and so she works a lot with those. So are you guys good referral partners?
Probably. I'm sure that there's going to be situations where she's going to come to a client and they're going to have, something that needs to work a particular way for her to be able to do what she needs to do, and I can help with that. And then vice versa. I've got a client that needs something to be automated. I can call her and have them, talk to her to get that particular thing automated that I know probably can be.
Right. But once you figure out what would work best for them, do you make suggestions for them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Then once we've answered those questions that we talked about, then it's a question of, okay, these are your answers. So that means these are the things that are probably going to work best for you. So let's move from retail to a B2B business that does service work of some kind for other businesses and has, at least some people in the office that are working in Outlook on all the time and are running some sort of CRM software. That kind of a business, I'm probably going to recommend PCs, Windows computers, provided that they don't have a strong preference for Apple for some reason, or their
you mean like
software.
personal preference, like
personal preference for Apple, or the software that they're using. It doesn't only run on Apple or on Macs. The reason being that it's just so much cheaper. And there's so much more variety of software that runs on Windows than that does work on Macs. So if you ever wanted to switch in the future, if you're already on a Windows machine, moving to another piece of software that only works on Windows, you're already there.
Gotcha.
The number of pieces of software that only work on Macs that people really, really want to work on is fairly low. A lot of those tend to be in the creative side. So a lot of video editing, picture editing, music editing, that kind of software, either is specific to Macintosh.
I always think of anything creative is stronger on Macs than
or
PCs.
works better there for some particular reason. It's not always true, and it depends on the software, but those are the ones where you traditionally find that kind of a preference. Most everything else, it's going to be, no, you're probably better off with Windows unless you've got that strong preference.
Okay. And then from there, printers, you do all, like I said, you'll do all that. You'll make suggestions. Will you even like go out and if they give you the budget, you purchase it? And
Absolutely.
install?
I had a client recently who had gone out and gotten a printer, and unfortunately that printer was not doing the job that they needed. And I said, I think you need this other kind of printer. I think you'll be happier with it. And she's like, well, can you just go pick one up for me? I'm like, sure, why not? So I went over to Best Buy and picked one up and brought it to her house.
Nice.
And got it set up.
VIP service.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to pay for me to buy it for you, then I'll buy it for you. I don't care.
No, I think, honestly, I think it's worth every penny. To have you come over and fix my stuff so that it works was worth every penny that I paid you.
Exactly. And honestly, it's always better for a lot of these kinds of things to ask an expert ahead of time what you should be getting. Even if you don't want to buy from them, at least get an idea of what you should avoid.
Right.
So for instance, printers. I've dealt with a large number of people in the last few years that have had just really bad luck with HP printers.
HP.
And as a result, anything that's consumer grade HP, printers, laptops, all kinds of things, anything that I have seen that's consumer grade, that's not meant specifically for businesses and big businesses especially, I don't recommend any of it anymore. Just don't do it. I don't buy HP laptops anymore. I don't buy HP printers. I'm done with them because everybody has too many problems.
Right.
And I know that because I service lots of people.
Right. So it's not like it's just like a one lemon. It's like the whole thing.
Exactly.
Like
and I can see that from seeing lots of different clients. Whereas, HP for a long, long time was the best printer you could get.
I do remember that.
Recognizable.
And so they're coasting on that particular reputation now from my perspective. And I'm like, this is wrong now.
Well, I remember with printers. I mean, printers have always been like the nemesis of the world. But I mean, you had printer sales people. You had companies that's all they do is like rent printers, these big industrial printers to places, and then they break, and then you have to have them come in, and and then they're on the system network. So do you have to do a lot of that, like get networks to talk to the printer and all the things?
I don't do it as much as I used to.
I think because a lot of people are getting away from printed material.
Certainly there's some of that, and there's also the fact that it seems like a lot of those companies have finally wised up and gotten some kind of IT on staff so that they can handle it themselves without having to get in touch with the internal IT of the company that they're working with. And a lot of times smaller businesses will also have, their internal network just be as basic as possible, and it's just through their ISP, the Spectrums of the world and whatnot. And so it's gotten a little bit easier for them because it's been, a lot of stuff has been a little bit more standardized. Yeah. And some of the technology has gotten better.
So you've kind of veered away from HP. Is there a brand that you veered towards?
As far as printers are concerned, consumer grade printers, I would say Brother is the absolute value leader from my perspective. They make really good devices. The drivers that they have for them, the stuff that actually makes the computer talk to the printer, are just rock solid. They don't mess up. They don't have problems. It's very rare that I have to deal with
Brother. I never even heard of it. I'm like Canon. I'm thinking Canon. So
I mean, Canons are good. There's no doubt. Brother is probably the one that's been the best.
All right. Well, we'll be back with more BaaD Radio, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Frogger's Grill and Bar. Looking for a place to go with friends or meet new ones? Then you're looking for Frogger's Grill and Bar. With daily specials, an amazing kids menu, and sports, and yes, more sports. There is something for everyone. And don't miss out on Frogger's amazing menu where everything is fresh, never frozen. With 4 great locations, there is bound to be one near you. Oviedo, Mount Dora, Apopka, and Altamont Springs. Frogger's, hop in with food and fun.
I'm going to have to get them. I'm going to have to get it.
We had a live broadcast with Brooke Boltz's podcast, Miss Biz, at the Oviedo location yesterday. And it was a lot of fun. Then we had a really good turnout. It was like we had this whole back section kind of like for the party, and we filled the whole thing up. Next time I'm going to need like a PA system though, or something like that. So because like we had microphones for her so we could record it, but projecting her voice out, like both Rachel and Brooke, they, you know what I mean? They're not soft spoken, but you don't realize
so
how
loud
much
in there.
like background sound there is in a restaurant. But it was a lot of fun. Like I said, it was cool to see how it works. They did some fun interactive stuff. But I think I'm going to try to encourage to something that we can do on a monthly basis as a networking kind of thing. They do offer a lot of really good business insight too. One of the features or one of the segments they talked about was like gift giving and how important it is, and when you have clients,
Right.
and to give the right gifts and make sure that you're giving them a gift with their logo on it, not yours. You know, things that you don't really think about, and you're like, okay, you're right. They probably would rather like drink out of a a tumbler that's branded for them, not for me. But anyway, so that was a lot of fun at Frogger's. And we're here with John Kennedy with Forge IT Consultant. And so Forge IT Consulting. And so we had talked about like starting a retail location. And now I would like to switch over to talk about like setting up maybe like a medical office. There's multiple rooms. Maybe there's some equipment like x-rays machines.
Right.
So I mean, first and foremost, do you take on projects that big?
Absolutely.
Okay. And let's see what that looks like from start.
So for that, you're going to need to make sure as you're getting the space that you're making sure you have enough wired networking in the office to handle the stuff that you're dealing with.
And would you say that that's something you talk to the realtor with or with the property management person?
It depends on what type of property you're getting and such. But yeah, absolutely. Even at the realtor stage, I would make sure that you're getting a location that either is already wired or one where, the owner would allow you to do additional wiring or possibly even help you with the wiring, because it's very important for that kind of an office to have their network be as reliable as possible. And a wired network is always more reliable than a wireless network.
Is that why, like, you see lots of times if a space becomes vacant, it's usually the same type of business that goes into that? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, when
I would
you know
imagine,
what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I would imagine that a lot of it has to do with,
how it's wired up.
Not necessarily just the wiring, but other types of wiring. It could be where the power is, or it could be where the plumbing is. I mean, for a restaurant, you need to have those things in those places, or it's just not going to work. And so I would imagine it's very similar for other types of businesses. Yeah.
So if I'm opening a medical office and I'm probably going to be best off trying to find a place that was a medical office prior.
Probably so.
It's
Probably less work, like restructuring, like physically inside too.
Right.
You definitely need to have a commercial realtor on the show. Ask them that question.
Actually, you know what? That's not a bad idea. All right. So what does it look like next? You make sure it's wired properly.
So make sure you get it wired properly. And then the next big thing is EMR. You need to know where what electronic medical record software you're going to be using and what does it need. Is it going to be hosted in the cloud? Is it going to be hosted locally? Is it going to run on Macs? Is it going to run on Windows? Is it going to be in a web browser? What does it need?
But I mean, do you have clients that just don't even know what any of this is and you just have to figure it out for them?
Not usually. Usually they're coming from I know which one I want to use.
Okay.
And so as a result, it's just, okay, which one is it? What does it need? And then I have to go through and figure out, well, what does it need?
Right.
So if it needs a server on site, I need to make sure that there's a server available. If you don't already have one, we need to buy one or build one, and come up with all of the things that it needs in order to work. A lot of EMRs these days are cloud hosted, especially for the smaller offices, and that's great. It means you don't have to worry about a server and worry about any of that stuff.
If it's in the cloud, then you don't have to worry about storage, right?
Right. You don't have to worry about where your data is being stored. You need to worry about making sure that whoever it is that's doing this storing for you is doing all the things that they need to do
security.
for HIPAA. So the security on it, the backups on it, because all that data has to be backed up and it needs to be backed up the right way. Are they backing it up? They should be. These are things you need to make sure you're getting.
Right.
But they should be doing those things because it is required. And they'll always say, oh, we're HIPAA compliant. But that doesn't mean that your office is HIPAA compliant just because your EMR is. You have to still do the security that's required by HIPAA for the computers that are all accessing that EMR, regardless of whether or not the data is stored there permanently, because it's still being accessed from there. So you still need to make sure, okay, now we need to do all of the other HIPAA security stuff. The network needs to have a firewall.
I'm guessing HIPAA, I've heard of it, it's just like the government, like police on things.
It is the regulations that are that surround the protection of patient data.
Okay.
It's more hospital nurses.
And
Well, no, it's everybody, anybody. And it can be also people that don't actually store that data for medical reasons. So it could be a personal injury attorney. They're still bound by HIPAA because they still have that data.
Okay.
So it's anybody that's dealing with patient data. So anybody that accesses patient data from a computer, that computer needs to be protected as if it was storing that data.
Okay. And you know all the HIPAA rules then?
I know all the HIPAA rules as they apply to IT. Now, HIPAA also applies to parts that don't have anything to do with IT. You have to, like, say, making sure that if you're writing stuff down on paper someplace, that gets dealt with in a particular way under HIPAA, and you have to handle things the way that it says.
Interesting.
It also has to do with the policies and procedures of a medical office.
Okay.
That say, okay, how are these records accessed? Who's allowed to access them? How are they allowed to access them?
These are just things I'd never think of.
These are
It's kind of
things that-
fascinating.
Yeah, they're super important to be able to comply with HIPAA, but they're not things that I do.
Right.
It's something that you need to be working with a lawyer or a HIPAA consultant that does that parts of it.
Right.
Now, there's companies out there that do that. That's all that they do.
Is make sure that companies are HIPAA compliant.
Right, and you have to do an audit every year. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that you have to do that is not IT.
So, but your job, like I said, IT wise, you're making it HIPAA compliant, so they
Right,
can come
I'm
and
doing the
pass
IT
inspection.
part
Right.
so that they can comply with those parts of it. Absolutely.
So you've got the EM something system.
You've got the EMR system,
right?
And now we're setting up your network and we're protecting it with a firewall. We're making sure that every computer that's behind that firewall that accesses that data is encrypted. We're making sure that it has advanced antivirus on it. We're making sure that if you've got email, we're making sure that you're not sending any email that has patient data in it unless that's encrypted. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff on there, but I would make sure that at the very minimum, you have a network that has a firewall. You have.
Let's talk. I have a question about firewalls.
Sure.
Myself. Is that something that's actually like a piece of hardware that you buy, or is that
In this context, it is.
Okay.
Firewalls can also be a piece of software that's running on a computer.
So basically, a firewall is just a protection service.
It's a thing that filters what traffic is allowed to go through a network.
Okay.
So on a computer, it's filtering what traffic is allowed to hit the computer itself, like what traffic that's coming in on this network device, whatever it is, your wired connection, your wireless connection, what is allowed to come in, what is allowed to go out. A piece of network hardware that's a firewall is doing it for the entire network. So everything behind it is your internal network. Everything on the other side is the internet. It's preventing certain data from going out and certain data from coming in.
And who sets those guidelines on what it allows? Oh, hold on.
That's up to you and your IT guy.
All right. That's interesting. This is fascinating. All right. Well, we're going to go to break again. It comes really fast. So stay tuned for more BaaD Radio.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and this portion of the show is brought to you by Liberty Property Inspections. Your home is one of your most important investments, so don't trust it to just anyone. LibertyPropertyInspections.net, helping you protect your investment. We're here with John Kennedy with Forge IT Consulting. Before break, we got on the topic of firewall, and that just leads me directly into security, because that's like a big portion of what you do is the security part.
Absolutely. It's very important because no matter what size of business you are a lucrative target. And no matter what type of person you are a potentially lucrative target. And the hackers and cyber criminals of the world are much more interested in attacking somebody that is lightly or under-defended than they are the big score that's super well defended.
So I think a lot of times is what people don't realize is what the hacker's end game is. And they might say, hey, we just started. We don't have any money. So what's a hacker going to do by getting in? But it's information, right?
Most of the time, the primary way a business will be attacked is either through ransomware or phishing. And phishing with the goal of getting some employee to send money someplace they shouldn't.
Okay, so that's the end game. Somebody's sending money. Now, we've gotten the whole thing with, hey, buy me some Publix gift cards. Like, I've seen that one. The more recent one I saw was pretty legit looking, and it was, hey, this is, it came through somebody with the agency that I work for, and it had to do with employment status. And it looked legit, but it looked like it was from payroll. And I know that that's the system that we use for paychecks. But it wasn't. I didn't click it, but it looked like it. So what would they gain from me clicking that? I don't understand.
Well, it depends. I mean, they could be just trying to get more information from you. Say, like, they get you to log in to a fake website that isn't the Paychex website. All of a sudden, they've got your username and password to log into the actual Paychex website. I don't know what data is on there that's useful, but I'm sure there is, especially considering I would imagine you'd have stuff like social security numbers and other stuff there so they could start doing identity theft.
Yeah,
there's so much data out there that can be lucrative for them.
I had somebody do a Bank of America hit on my credit because I have it all set up to where I can see it, and I haven't done it. So, I was talking with Tom, and I'm like, he goes, how would somebody get your social security number? I'm like,
a million different ways.
I know, right?
Yeah. So, and then there's the the one that's popular right now is I don't know if you guys have seen the trailer for The Beekeeper.
I was about to say, when you were talking about all this, I was like, I need to bring up The Beekeeper, but I'm like, nobody's not going to know what I'm talking about.
What is it?
Okay, it's a movie. It's it's an action flick, but at the one of the starting things is this little lady gets hit by hackers that wipe her out as far as all of her bank accounts are concerned by getting her to go to a fake website that says that she's been infected, and you call a number that is supposedly, hey, we're going to get rid of this for you by this is how you get rid of this particular problem, because it looks like it's maybe from Microsoft or something like that. It looks legitimate. You call them, you get on the phone with them, they talk you through getting connected to your computer, and then they talk you into getting connected to your bank accounts for whatever reason. I mean, they're essentially just bullshitting you, but they're doing it cleverly in ways that people fall for all the time. And at the end of it, she's just been cleaned out. All of her money, all of her savings is just gone.
Right.
And they do this by just blanketing places that people are likely to go with various different things, like spam emails, websites that have advertising on them that isn't terribly well looked at.
Right.
Some of that advertising out there isn't actually advertising. It's actually what's called malvertising. You click on it and it takes you to one of these kinds of websites.
Gotcha.
Because you can pay for an ad on basically anything, and they're not really going to check what you're doing with it. If you're sending it to a malware site, the ad agency doesn't care. They're not checking.
Right.
So it could be something like that. They could send you to a website that you download something on your computer, like ransomware. There's just so many different ways that this can start. But the goal is to get you on the phone and get you to let them into your computer.
Right.
Anybody that does this kind of thing, you need to be super wary of. You need to be expecting that call, and you need to know that whoever it is that is calling is legit, or whoever you're calling is legit, because 99% of the time, these websites are super scary. They'll start playing a lot of stuff that sounds like, oh my God, I'm infected and I need to do something right away.
Right.
I've had clients call me once a month for years having exactly this website. And I'm like, oh, yep, I know what this is. Just close your web browser, restart your web browser, and you're fine. You don't know how to do it. Just reboot your computer. Just when you start the web browser again, just don't click restore. You'll be fine.
Well, you know what I have a hard time with
But it's
is
hard.
with the business owner. I own Business at a Distance LLC, and I get things that look legit. They're saying you need to do this. Do you have this done? You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know what's real and what's not real. The 95% of it is not real. It's like some sales gimmick, but it's like, you have not filed this, and I'm like, uh-oh, what have I not filed?
Right, exactly. And that fear is a good way to get people to do what you want. When they're afraid, they're more willing to trust somebody that says, here, do this to fix it. And that's why it's used all the time. But as far as preventing that in the first place, if you're using, your own domain, you're hosting your own email, you can add filtering to that email to block the majority of that kind of stuff.
And how does it does it just look at weird emails like with funny like hyphens and things like that?
It checks for, is this a domain that was created within the last 48 hours? It's an easy thing to check. Is this something that's got a link in it that goes someplace that's known to be bad? Is this thing pretending to be from someplace that it's actually not? So it's looking at all of these kinds of things and more to see whether or not this looks like something that's phishing, or does this look like something that's real?
This seems like an area where AI would be actually a positive
And it
thing.
actually is already in use.
So that's good. But it needs to be better, because I have like 3,000 emails that are all junk. I'm like, come on. Like,
yeah, no, I mean,
filter it out.
I'm surprised how much I still get, even with the filtering I get. I mean, it's way better than it used to be. But yeah, like I said, there's still some that get through
None
for
of it's
sure.
going to be perfect. No system is perfect, including, you get the very best top of the line antivirus. There's still a possibility that an infection will be created that will get past it.
And you mentioned earlier, I don't know if these are connected, but so when you have like security systems, or you have things that work off the Wi-Fi, that can actually make you more susceptible to like people finding holes into your systems to get.
Yeah, the more attack surface you have, because you have, just having Wi-Fi in general gives you a bigger attack surface, because anybody that's near enough to access your Wi-Fi has the possibility of hacking into your Wi-Fi. And once they're in your Wi-Fi, they're in your network, and then you have your entire network open to them to mess with stuff. Whereas on a wired network, you literally have to be inside the building, plugged in, to be able to access anything.
So setting up the business, security, especially like you said with medical, you're talking about people's like really important stuff. You can land your butt in jail if you're not HIPAA compliant, right?
You don't land yourself in jail, but you're definitely going to put yourself out of business, because I believe it's $10,000 per incident.
Oh, jeez.
And every medical record is a separate incident.
Dang.
So you've got a decently sized small business medical company. You get your entire EMR system gets compromised. Your entire patient load gets compromised, and they see that you did not attempt to comply with HIPAA. You're going to be out of business,
right?
And there
$10,000.
Yeah, there's a HIPAA wall of shame website out there that you can go check if you are so inclined for your doctors.
A HIPAA wall of shame. I'm gonna have to check that out just for the fun of it. All right, well, we're going to break, and when we get back, we'll have more BaaD Radio.
Welcome back to BaaD Radio, brought to you by Premier Couple Superstore, because a couple that plays together stays together.
Welcome back, and want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, boltslegal.com. Fear no storm with Bolts Legal. Crazy Muscle Nutrition, located on 436 in Castleberry. Inbalance Bodywork in Lake Mary. Derek Brantley is ready to help take your pain away. Forge IT Consulting, providing a fully outsourced IT department with a personal touch for small business. ForgeITConsulting.com. And we actually have, that's this one here. So it's so crazy. We've been talking for almost 2 hours now, and it just doesn't, like, I could just sit here and listen to him talk about all this stuff. And each time, you know, I don't absorb it all, but each time I learn a little bit more, and it's very interesting. And I always tell Melissa, I'm like, just by doing the show alone, we're going to be like experts
on all these different
on
fields.
so many different,
and
so many different things.
Especially the next time, if we do have questions from the audience, I mean, then we can drill down into those specific questions a little more.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll give you the questions beforehand too, so that you can be ready for them.
Prepared.
But we were talking about setting up the business and how that goes. I meant, so how does it work in regards to, like, do people pay you by job, or do you get like contracted out? So like you said, how does that all work?
It really depends on the business owner and how they like to do business. So a lot of businesses, when they're first starting to work with me, they prefer, and the smaller businesses prefer to pay as they go. So whatever work that I do, I charge them an hourly rate, and they pay me for the work that I do and nothing else.
Okay.
If they have monthly software or other subscriptions that they're paying for through me, that's separate. But we can, drill that down and be a la carte for the things that they
like
need.
I do. Like
Exactly.
we have it on auto though. I automatically get an invoice and it just auto pays, and I know it's all taken care of.
Exactly. So like your email hosting and the email security that you get through me, that's automated every month. You're paying like $20 or something.
It's not a lot.
It's not much.
So it's nice.
And then like when I need to come fix your printer or something, I just charge you the hourly rate, and you get a separate invoice for that.
Yeah.
A lot of people like it that way. I'm perfectly happy with that way, and I offer it to everybody. Other clients like to be a little bit more, planned out, and they want just everything taken care of. They don't want to worry about it, and they don't want to worry about how much they're paying me. So they get what's called a pay one price method, where I figure out what are the services they need, how many computers do they have, how many users do they have, and then I come up with, okay, you're going to pay this much per user and this much per computer. Let's count them up. That's how much you pay, and you don't pay anything else unless there's a major change in your network. Say like you add a new computer entirely. Well, okay, that has additional charges or whatever, but the month-to-month payment that they're paying all the time, or when they, hey, I've got a problem, they never have to worry that they're paying more for that.
No, I can see the benefit of both.
Just done. I don't have to worry about it. It's just done.
It's definitely for people that are like very budget conscious, and they want to be able to say, my costs are this much no matter what. Exactly.
And sometimes there'll be a project that needs to be done, like a major change of some sort, and I'll always get them a quote for that ahead of time, so that they know, okay, how much is this going to be costing in addition to whatever else that I'm paying for. So I try to make it work the way the client needs it to work, because for me, either one's fine.
Right. Well, that's good that you're in a position to be able to offer those kind of things, because I see Bennett, like, I know that I don't have enough issues to like have you on a retainer.
No, it doesn't make sense for you. Absolutely.
But I can see where a doctor's office or something like that, where there's multiple computers and you just never know.
Yeah, if you're calling on a regular basis, it probably makes more sense to be on that situation, so that you just don't need to worry about it. But there's ones that do, and they prefer to stay that way, and they can.
And then
I write it all down. That's the nice part.
Well, I ask him, I'm like, can you send me the invoice? He goes, it'll come at the end of the month. Or, he puts everything in, and I guess at the end of the month, that's when your system sends it all out. And I'm like, okay. So like you said, it's nice for you that you're in that situation, that you just can automate it and not have to worry about it too.
Yep.
But I think it's really important, like I said, for business owners. Now, what is your target demo?
I would say it's a business that has some kind of back office or employees that primarily work on a computer. So a lot of B2B businesses, businesses that are that are services like doctors' offices, lawyers' offices, professionals. They usually work on computers. They'll need more help. Those are the ideal clients.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the most common problems you see?
Bad Wi-Fi, lack of backups, lack of security. People that are just like, man, I've never thought about this, and I've listened to something that scared me. I need somebody to do this for me. I get too much spam. I had a scare where either my computer almost got infected or did get infected, or I got this phishing email and I almost did something. I want to prevent that.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things are the things that people are usually worried about. And of course, printers.
Well, yeah, printers.
Printers forever.
Nemesis. But I know for me personally, like when we got hacked last year, it kept me up at night. It was very personal. Not that these people knew me from anybody else, but it's being very violated to have somebody in your things and taking money out of your accounts and your kids' accounts.
Yeah.
Like they did. They took money from Aiden's account and Anna's account and Zelled it. Now, we had a good outcome, and I'll have to give Chase props for that. But it's scary
Yeah,
when you
it's very
think about
scary.
it. And so what were some of the things that you did after security-wise on my computer? Because I know I had you come do a bunch of stuff.
If I recall correctly, we removed the pre-installed antivirus that was on the computer.
Yes,
'cause that's I see it all the time. It's not something I get calls for, but I see it constantly because it's always out there. The McAfees and the Nortons and whatever that gets
Those
installed.
are viruses by themselves, in my opinion.
I mean, McAfee probably, Norton not so much, but still, they're not that good. They're installed for free on your computer from the manufacturer for a reason, and it's because those companies are paying the manufacturer to put it on there.
I bet they're
so
paying
that
a
they
lot,
can,
too.
Exactly, so that they can say, okay, you're getting this free one for such amount of time, and when it's up, you're not protected anymore, quote unquote. Well, yeah, you're not, as long as you keep it on there. If you uninstall it, the Windows Defender software that comes pre-installed with Windows 10 and Windows 11, but gets disabled if you install any other kind of antivirus on the computer, is actually better than either one of those.
Really?
I remember you saying that last time.
Exactly. So I remove that anywhere I see it. Let's see. I think the other major thing we did was just add email filtering to help prevent those kinds of
I think that's what we
filtering.
determined is that probably where that happened initially is through email. What about like when people are downloading things, like, you know what I mean, like WeTransfer, or is that a place where there tends to be a lot of, is that open you up for a lot of opportunity for being hacked?
Not necessarily. I mean, it gets you in the habit of downloading things from a particular website on a regular basis.
That
and
is
so
true.
Phishing emails that use that knowledge about you and your habits are that much more effective. But the site itself isn't dangerous. The fact that you use it isn't dangerous. It's just that it's a habit that you need to know that you have, that you need to make sure that you're checking that you're downloading the right stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you get an email that looks legit but isn't, and you go to a WeTransfer and you download something that's got malware embedded in it, well, you're going to get infected.
Right. That's something I need to pay attention to, because I do like transfer large files back and forth with a lot of different people, and that's a thing.
Any bigger company honestly should invest in cybersecurity training. Even smaller companies that are just themselves, it couldn't hurt to do a little bit of it.
Do you do that?
I definitely offer some services that do it automatedly. I don't do it usually directly as me just sitting down and teaching, but there's lots of services out there, and that kind of training is enormously helpful.
Yeah, well, we're actually at the end of the show, which is crazy because it goes so fast. So give everybody your contact information.
Okay, so my website is forgeitconsulting.com. That's FORGEIT consulting.com. It's also shortened to forgeitc.com. You can reach me at 407-318-2671. Dial 0 to get me directly once you hit the auto attendant. And you can email me at john@forgeitconsulting.com.
Awesome.
All right. And if you need video or photography work, you can email me at melissa@strikingbrand.com.
And I am Angela, and I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors. And thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thanks, Angela.